Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And so in today's video, we're going to go through a 10-minute ankle mobility workout. And it basically comprises of 5 different exercises that each address a little bit of a different piece of the overall puzzle of what happens when we sort of lose ankle mobility. And these exercises aren't necessarily all the traditional ankle stretches that you would have heard before, but they're ones that I find really useful clinically, and also things that maybe touch on a few pieces of the puzzle that a lot of people aren't looking at or don't focus on enough when trying to make their ankles more flexible. Now, before we get into it, if you do go in to enjoy the video, if you find it really useful, let me know in the comments below. If there's a particular stretch that we go through that you haven't seen before, or that you do it and you find it really helps open up those ankles in a way that you haven't really had before, please let me know. And also, if you could leave a like rating down below and consider subscribing to the channel, it just really helps these videos reach more people. It helps the channel grow, which is obviously what we want to try and do here. We want to get this information out to as many people as possible. So what we want to do as we get into these exercises is the first thing that we always need to do before any stretching is to take a baseline measurement of how mobile or inflexible your ankles feel. Then after each exercise, we want to come back and reassess your mobility so that you can see specifically what it has done, so that you're not guessing, you're not doing it just on good faith, that you can see some tangible results. So you'll know out of each of these 5 exercises, excuse me, and any others that you may do, you'll know instantly which ones work best for you, which ones give you the most benefit, and which ones maybe you don't have to worry about if you're confident that you're doing them correctly. So for me, the best way to sort of get a good, quick reference of how your ankles feel is just with a deep squat. So what we want to get you to do is with your feet straight, we want to make it the same every time. Feet straight, knees rotated out as far as you feel comfortable, and then you just want to drop down as deep as you feel comfortable without those heels coming off and without your knees caving in, without your toes sort of pointing outwards. You just want to get a general sense of how mobile it feels. Does it feel tight anywhere in particular? Does it feel stiff anywhere? Does anything hurt? Because again, we're going to come back to this each time and see if it feels any different. Now, the first thing we want to do is probably the best exercise that I've seen straight away is the banded ankle stretch. So you would have seen this on the channel before, but it's a really important exercise to go over because of how important ankle stiffness is to a lot of sort of dysfunction up the leg. This is a really important exercise to master. Now, all you need is a power band. You can get them anywhere, any sporting goods stores. I'll link one in the description. You can check it out to see what they look like and then go hunting. It's up to you guys. But it's a really, really good way to de-stiffen an ankle joint capsule. So this isn't just a very specific muscular stretch. We're going deeper into the ankle joint to free up the stiff capsule that generally happens from things like heeled shoes, flip-flops or thongs. They're the things that tend to rob us of the joint mobility that we need. The banded ankle stretch is a fantastic way to reclaim that quickly. Now, all you need to do is tie it to something that's not going to move. Then we want you to stand up. We want to place it just underneath your, just above, sorry, the ankle bone. And we're going to stretch it out as far as you feel comfortable, stepping out with the other leg. All we're doing here is we're bending the back ankle as far as you feel comfortable. So what a lot of people tend to do with this stretch is they tend to sit down on the stretch and they tend to work really hard. But we want to get you to take your hips past your ankle, bend your back ankle, and potentially your back knee a little bit, but you should ultimately be feeling it somewhere through the back of the joint. It may not feel like a traditional muscle stretch, but we're looking for some pressure at the back of the joint there. And the other thing to consider, and we do this every time, but if you can imagine the band still pulling backwards, we want to make sure that your knee doesn't cave inwards, which is a traditional position that a lot of people get into if your body's trying to go around a stiff ankle. We want to get you to come out as far as you can and rotate out as far as you can without your foot lifting up off the ground. So your foot stays nice and still, that ankle bends in an outward position, and we want to stay in that position for, again, 1 minute to let this band do its work. Now, while we're in the stretch, what we can get you to do is maybe every 5 or 10 seconds, just try and tense all the muscles in your ankle. Try and sort of scrunch your foot up a little bit, get all the muscles in your ankle to tighten up for about 10 seconds. And then when you relax, you might find you can just go a little bit further into the stretch than you could before. You want to hold this, again, same thing again, squeeze all the muscles down low, make them work for a few seconds. Again, this includes the muscular component, so it does muscles and joints. But then when you relax again, you might find you can go a little bit further again into the stretch. So again, once you've done that on one side, then come back and do it on the other side for a total of 2 minutes in total. And then what we want to do is we want to recheck your ability to squat. And what I find here, and you might see this on the video, is this side now feels like it drops down deeper. This side doesn't move as much. I've got more mobility in this left ankle than I do from this right ankle. If I was to redo it on the right side, you would see that this would drop down just as much again. So exercise number 1, banded ankle stretch, should be a foundational exercise in anyone's regime. Doesn't matter who you are, what you do. If you have any form of ankle stiffness, this is by far one of the best exercises you'll ever do. So give it a go. Let me know how you find it in the comments below. Really important exercise. The second exercise involves a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball. It's a little bit different to what a lot of people expect, but what we find a lot with most ankles is the traditional movement pattern that a lot of people sort of evolve to adopt over time is one where their arches collapse. Whether their ankle's stiff, that knee tracks around the stiffness, and it forces a collapse in the ankle and collapse in the arch of the foot. And what tends to happen is that there's a bunch of muscles or some soft tissue that attaches from the arch, goes behind your ankle bone and attaches into sort of the inside of your shin. And these muscles can get quite tight. If that arch is consistently flattening, then this muscle is always under tension, and over time it becomes tight to compensate, and it becomes a handbrake to normal ankle flexibility. So what we want to get you to do with the ball, tennis ball, lacrosse ball, cricket ball, baseball, whatever you want to do, you can use your thumbs if you want to. If you find the bony bump in your ankle, coming back from that and then just up a little bit, we basically want to get you to dig the ball into that part of your body. So you can sort of see here, I'm pressing the ball in and I'm trying to basically move it around until I find something that feels tight, stiff or tender. And then what I want to do here is I found a little bit of a tight spot here for me. All I want to do here is I want to put some pressure through that to pin it down, and then I want to move my ankle around. I want to try and shear that tissue free as best as possible. And you might find the first time you press down, it's quite tender, and then as you move it, it might feel a bit restricted, but then after about 10 or 15 seconds, if not shorter, you should feel like that tissue starts to give, and then we want to get you to move up or down or around until you find the next tight spot. So again, we want to do this for about a minute in total. Just find the spots that you want to use the ball on, and then just try and peel away that tissue as best as you feel comfortable. You can't hurt yourself, but still respect how it feels, particularly if this hasn't been done before. It could be quite tender to begin with. And again, we're going to do this for a minute, and then we're going to move on to the other side, do the same thing on the other side. You can obviously do this for longer if you want to. You can do all of these stretches for longer if you want to. But we know that any more than 10 minutes is a little bit hard for people to force themselves to do. Hopefully it's a little bit easier to do this for a lot of people if you can see the benefits that you get with that test and retest. But again, mobility is a bit of a positive death by 1,000 cuts. You don't have to do all 1,000 in the one go. You can do 10 or 15, then do another 10 and 15 and stay consistent, and eventually you'll get there. So again, I'm going to spend some time freeing up this tissue. So it was this side that I did. And once you've done that, we're going to come back again and try the squat, and then all of a sudden it feels a little bit looser on this right hand side for me. So again, for me it doesn't feel as loose as it did after I've stretched the band on this side, but it feels looser than it did before. So again, if you combine those two together, you're potentially going to have some really strong sort of ankle opening that you didn't have before. Now, it's a really important one to do. Excuse me. So the second and third exercises, so the third and fourth exercises, we're going to start to attack the calf muscle. Now, a lot of people may realize, some people may not, there's actually two calf muscles, or two muscles that make up the calf. You've got the big, thick gastroc muscle that everyone sort of associates with the calf. You take that off, below that you've got your soleus muscle. Both of those muscles cross the back of the ankle. If they're tight and restricted, then obviously they're going to restrict your ability to bend your ankle. So you can do this a million ways. One of the best ways to do this is to just do it up against a wall. So we'll start with the gastroc stretch. Essentially with this stretch, we keep your knees straight and we're bending from the hip. So you can do this off a step if you want to. For me, doing it up against the wall, you want to try and get your heel as close to the surface that you're stretching as possible. Keeping your glutes switched on, we're going to try and press that hip to the wall. Press it to the side of the door here. And then we're looking for some tightness down into this calf muscle. And again, similar to the banded ankle stretch, what we want to get you to do here is we want to get you to squeeze that muscle. So tense your foot up, push your foot back into the wall, make that calf muscle work for a few seconds. hold it for 5 seconds, then relax. And once you've done that, you might find you can go a little bit further, give it a good tense again, and then relax, and then go further again. And keep repeating that for about a minute. Do it for about a minute or two, you stop making change. But you might find that it might be tight enough back there that you can do it for a minute, no worries. So once you've done that one, we want to then bend the knee a little bit. So it's going to be a little bit more awkward in this position to see this, but I'm going to bend this knee, and we're going to attack the Soleus muscle. So you might find it's a little bit lower down than usual. Instead of in the meaty gastroc area with your legs straight, you may find it's a little bit lower down, but the same rules apply. We want to make sure that you bend that back out, bend the knee, bend the ankle, and press that hip to the wall. You'll feel it a little bit lower down. Same deal again. Give it a good squeeze. Push your foot back into the wall. Hold it for a few seconds. Relax. Go a little bit further. Keep repeating that process until you see that you've stopped making change, or until you've got to about a minute or so. Again, do it on both sides. And then once we've done both of those, you should feel again that it's a little bit easier to get down further. So like I said, please don't take my word for any of this. Make sure that you do a squat or some form of ankle movement before each exercise so that you can gauge how different it feels afterwards. Because if you don't see a change with these exercises, you haven't made a change. And I think the old school ideas that we see a lot is that we look at stretching as this thing where you just have to do it and eventually you'll see some progress over time. But the reality is, if you're not seeing immediate change after doing some stretching, if you're not seeing some immediate rewards for the effort you've just put in, you probably haven't done anything. You probably just wasted your time. So as you'll notice with a lot of these exercises, we're incorporating movements or muscle activation into them. We're sort of finding now that that static stretching of just holding a stretch or holding a position for a while doesn't make the required change that we need to see progress over time. Essentially, it doesn't work. But we need to make sure that we're getting active, we're using movements, which is what the body looks for. And by doing that, you should see some immediate changes straight away. Like I said, you have to find it. If you're not, then let me know. But if you're not seeing that change, you're probably not making it. We don't want you to waste your time. You've got more important things to do. Now, the fifth exercise, the last exercise in this series, is we're going to go after something that gets missed a lot with restricted ankles, and that's skin sliding surface mobility. Now, what we don't realize a lot of the time is the tissue and the skin, the soft tissue around the heel, can get glued down. And what it does is it creates this really sort of tough exoskeleton that doesn't allow the ankle joint and the tissue underneath that to floss freely or to move as it should. Now, what tends to happen with the sliding surface dysfunction is, again, thanks to shoes and footwear, we get around with socks and shoes that essentially are clamped onto our heel. So there's pressure on that heel from the material of the sock and the shoe, and the heat that's created from being in the shoe, the pressure and the heat creates this laminating type effect on a lot of the fascia, a lot of the soft tissue in the skin over the top of those areas. So if you were to look at the skin of your hand, unless you wear gloves and put pressure on your hands all day, but when you slide the skin over your knuckles, your fingers, the back of your wrist, that skin should slide relatively smoothly, relatively easily. Even if you make a fist, there should still be a subtle amount of skin movement that you can get at those joints, because you need to have that to have mobile tissue to a large degree. However, if you then place your thumbs and your fingers over the tissue of your heel and you try and create the same sort of sliding surface movements, a lot of people will see, particularly around the Achilles tendon and around the sides as we get to the base of that heel, it often just feels like it's stuck down. And again, if you're trying to bend that ankle and you've got this clamp at the back, we often forget that beyond joint capsular stiffness, muscular tightness, the soft tissue on top of that whole structure can act like a clamp and a handbrake and resist that as well. So again, we can use a lacrosse ball, a tennis ball, you can use your thumbs, whatever you want to do. But a similar idea to the muscles that run up the side of your shin, we want to go looking down at the base of your heel, and hopefully you can see this. And we want to put some pressure and create some friction through that tissue. So I'm just creating some pressure down onto the tissue at the inside of my heel here, and I'm just trying to basically scrape that tissue away. So I'm not sort of rubbing the surface of the tissue, I'm putting some pressure down and I'm trying to shift that top layer of soft tissue, maybe on the soft tissue below or on the bony surfaces underneath. I'm just trying to restore some normal sliding and gliding of that tissue in all directions. So you should be able to find that there'll be a particular spot or two that just doesn't move for you guys. If you bend your ankle while you do this, really wind up that tissue, you might find that it's extra tight when it shouldn't be. But being in this position and then trying to shear that tissue free in all directions, we want to start to free up some of that soft tissue, take those handbrakes off, and allow the tissue underneath this skin to slide and sort of move a lot more freely. So again, we want to spend about a minute doing this. Again, with the ball that has a bit of grip, you can do the same thing. You can put some pressure through there and really get in there and be aggressive and try and free up that tissue as much as you can. And then again, what we want to find is, and hold me to this because we want you to see the same thing, is that when you squat down again afterwards, so for me, all of a sudden, this right side now feels looser than my left-hand side does. So if I was to get back into this, on my other side again, bend that foot back. So bend that foot into sort of more dorsiflexion, and then just really shear free some of that tissue as best as possible. So it's not a pretty job, it's not a sexy exercise, but getting in here is a really, really powerful way to sort of feed some mobility back into that ankle. And as I said, a lot of leg-related dysfunction, whether it's Achilles tendonitis or any Achilles problems, calf tears, shin splints, plantar fasciitis, a lot of knee problems, whether it's arthritis, meniscal issues, even setting you up for the more unfortunate things like ACL problems, collateral ligament issues, patellofemoral joint pain, ITB syndrome. If you name it, a lot of it has something to do with restricted ankles. It's such a plague on normal mechanics and normal motion that it's one of the founding sort of problems that, one of the founding issues that lead to a lot of problems. So being able to sort of source and find where your restriction is, and hopefully these 5 exercises give you a nice sort of spread of some of the major things that restrict ankle mobility. We're talking joint capsule, we're talking muscular tightness, whether it's the soleus or the gastroc. We're talking some tissue on the inside here, that tib post muscle, or whether it's just the sliding surface of your skin, which again goes missed a lot. Any or all of those together may be costing you normal function and setting you up for some problems down the track. So again, a minute aside on each of those, but just to highlight this, hopefully you can see a difference, but I'm more interested in how it feels for me. And it's straight away, they now feel a little bit more even. So I feel like I can get my heels down a little bit more. I can sit up on this squat a little bit more without my heels wanting to lift up. So again, give those 5 exercises a go. 1 minute aside, so 2 minutes in total. Get a bit of work, move on to the next one, do your 10 minutes, and then go do something else that you find more enjoyable. But make sure that you're seeing a genuine change, otherwise you're probably wasting your time. What I find clinically is that stretching isn't boring for a lot of people because we don't enjoy it. It tends to be boring and a chore because we don't see progress. And as soon as you start to see some immediate change, you start feeling more motivated to do it because you're actually working towards something as opposed to just doing it because you're being told. So again, let me know in the comments below how you go with this. Is there anything new that you haven't seen before? Is it hitting a piece of that puzzle that you didn't realize you were missing? Again, please consider liking the video and subscribing if you're new, just to help us out. But as always, hopefully that was helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.